Hi, this is Cheryl, and I'm going to start teaching you how to cross stitch. Cross stitch is just a simple cross stitch. It's just little X's on fabric that is normally it's Aida cloth, and Aida cloth is nothing more than a stiff fabric that's it's woven, and it has these little holes. I don't know if I can actually, if you can see the little tiny holes, but it's not normally used for anything more than decoration, but it can be used for things you wear or handbags or stuff like that. This is some samples of things I've done. There's let's see if I can, there you go. Can you see the little Santa hanging the star up? And then these are just some designs I had made. I'm going to actually make these in to Christmas bags, little gift bags. I wanted you to see those, and I wanted you to see the size of them because they are pretty small. But the main thing with the Aida cloth, and Aida cloth is just one of the fabrics you can use. It's any kind of woven fabric works for cross stitch. It's just Aida cloth is the only thing I can get in my area without ordering online. But it's also the most commonly used. You can do cross stitch on regular fabric, it just doesn't look the same, because Aida cloth, it already has the grid, and that's what makes it so even. Okay, and I'll show you more about the Aida cloth later, but this is the fabric you use. It usually doesn't come in very big pieces. I've actually cut this down into, this is 1/4 of a sheet, and that's because that's what size bags I'm making these little designs out of, and we'll talk more about that. Aida cloth or other woven fabric is is the first thing you need for cross stitch. You also need some embroidery hoops. For these designs, I like to use my smaller hoop. This is a 6-inch hoop. Let me have that bag of hoops. I have a variety of sizes. I prefer this size for the patterns I'm doing. I have a big bag of different sizes, the bigger ones. I like using the bigger ones for the bigger projects. I do have plastic hoops. I don't care for plastic hoops. You may prefer them. I prefer the wooden ones, and we'll talk more about the embroidery hoops in a little while. Now, the patterns that you can, there's a variety of patterns. You can get pattern books like this. They have the patterns in here, and this is one of the things I wanted to show you. We'll look at this penguin right here, and you can see, let's see if I can get this where there's no glare on it, how big this pattern for the penguin is. When you finish, this is the size. So just make sure that you understand that the pattern is usually bigger than your actual product is going to be. Of course, it depends on what weave of fabric you get. Sometimes you can get bigger weaves and it'll come out bigger. So they just have the pattern bigger so that it's easier to see. But you can get these books. I actually picked these up at a thrift store. I have several designs, different things. This is, let me have that, let me have those there. I have a second book of those. I also have, this is the Santa bag. This is actually supposed to be made on Herta. but I wanted it smaller, and so this was the idea I had. I'm not particularly happy with the design of bag. That's why I'm changing it, but that's the pattern. As you can see, there's the chart. And then there's other things, like this is a tiny little stocking that I had gotten. I've had these patterns for many, many years. It's a tiny little stocking, and it tells you how to cut your Aida cloth. So it's actually in the shape of a little stocking. You can get these at the store. You can get these at any craft store, retail store. You can also get them at thrift stores, that kind of thing. I also have patterns for like picture frames, framed pictures, and other things. Now you can do other stuff. Let me have those transfer. I'm not going to do those now. You can get these iron-on transfer packs. Now, these are actually for embroidery, but you could actually use these for cross stitch if you put it on a sheet of graph paper. You can transfer the picture to graph paper. I don't know if you can see those or not, but you can actually transfer those to a sheet of graph paper and turn them into a cross stitch picture. And it doesn't take that much to actually, transfer it. But those are actually for embroidery. So, I'm going to give you this. Now, the other thing you're going to need, besides your cloth and your hoops and your pattern, is, of course, embroidery floss. And your embroidery floss, you have a ton of choices. This I have bought. Actually, I didn't buy it. My kids bought it for me for my birthday. A couple of multi-packs of yarn, of floss. And as you can see, there's a lot there. They have different ones. You can get variegated. You can get all different shades of colors. You can get neon. The choice of embroidery floss is huge. The other thing I'm wanting to talk about, let me have that pattern book again. On there they have a key that tells you, which one am I working on? This one. They have a key on here that shows you what colors. I don't know if you can see that or not. It has symbols, and it's not very clear. It has symbols, and it has the number, and this is the number that you would look for in your embroidery floss. On embroidery floss, they usually have some kind of number, and that number would be on your key chart. Now, that number might have changed over the years, so you want to also look at the picture to see what color. Now, this is a variegated green, but yeah, you just want to kind of go by your picture too, just to see what colors you need. So when you're doing your shopping for your colors, just bear in mind that the color number might not match, and it also depends on the brand. The brand that you pick, the numbers are going to be different. So what they use in the key code might be for a specific brand. So you have to be careful of that. Just make sure that, it goes kind of along with your picture. Okay, I'm not going to make this too much longer, but a couple of other things that I'm going to show you. Okay, Angel, can you have me, is my storage for my stuff. Now, when my kids bought my stuff for my birthday, they actually bought this kit for me, and this is is it had 100 of these little bobbins of floss in them. And they actually had, it was this case with all these bobbins. There was 100 different colors or 100 different bobbins in there. And something like that comes in real handy. They gave you extra little things to put your own on, or if you had extra or whatever you wanted to do with it. Something like this comes in real handy for storing your floss in, especially when you are like wrapping your own floss around these little bobbins. You can store them in this little case, which I really like this, and it had a little pattern on it, which I probably never really used. But and then also another case that I really like, I don't remember where I got this, but some of the places that you can check for is dollar stores, the fishing department, hunting and fishing stores. These kind of trays come in very handy. And some of them, this is one of them, has the removable little tabs, so you can actually create bigger or smaller compartments depending on what you need. The other bobbin is this kind. I don't know if they still sell these. I've had these for a long time, but these bobbins, they're actually plastic, whereas the white ones are cardboard. But these are plastic. These come in very handy for stray strands of floss, and they fit very nicely in these little compartments. You can find these little boxes that come in very handy. You store a lot of stuff in them. I have 2 of these kind, and then I have the one for the floss. When I'm working on a project, this is what I carry. This is it has everything in it I need to do an actual project, plus a few extra stuff. Some of the things you need is I have a needle threader. You can use either the little disposable ones like these, or you can have a bigger one, that has the little. So that needle threader, a small pair of scissors. It's important that you have a pointed end, and you want them small, because if you are taking out stitches, you want something that's small. Okay, you don't want a big bulky pair of scissors. Some of the other things is I actually have a little thing of thread yarn here that I use for a needle holder. I don't know if you can see that needle in there or not, but I have a needle stuck in there right there. I keep that down in my box so that I can stick my spare needles in there. And this is really a weird type thing that I actually have found comes in handy when I make mistakes. This, of all things, is I don't know if you can see that. It's a hook. It's like a, what is that? A latch hook. But this is actually for, there we go. This is actually for if you have a knitted sweater and it has a pull in it, you can put this through and pull to the inside so it doesn't show. And this has actually come in handy for me for correcting problems like with knots and when something got stuck and I couldn't get it through. So yeah, that actually comes in handy. Not something you have to have, but something I have that kind of comes in handy. A small ruler. Now I've got this one, but you can actually get a little metal ruler that you can find in the sewing department. But these come in handy when you're checking on your patterns and you're kind of lining up to see where you're at. You can just kind of use your ruler to kind of line up. See, and that helps. The fact that this one's clear and, you know, smaller makes it easier for me, but any kind of ruler, as long as you can line it up, it'll help you line up where you're supposed to be, and kind of not absolutely necessary, but helpful, you know. The main things is your scissors and your needles. Now, on the needles, you want to make sure that you use either cross-stitch needles, if you can find them, or embroidery needles. I use embroidery needles for my cross-stitch simply because it works. Then, of course, I have all my threads here. You know, I'm getting ready to do another one of these little Christmas decorations, and so I have all my threads here. That's for the next project. And I usually have at least 6 to 8 needles available at all times. I actually had a full package that I opened up, and they're actually with the thread that I was using. Like, for example, this one I done for the Santa moon and the star. And when I finished, I just left my needle in there, and when I packaged up, I left the needle in there. So the next time I have it, guess what? My needle's already there and it's already threaded. And here's, see, the low card, and there's my needle. Yeah. Needles are not that expensive, so having extra really helps. You know, you don't have to worry about unthreading and rethreading and all that. A couple of weird things I keep in my box that some people think that this is kind of strange. Nail clippers and a nail file. I do that because of the fact that when you're doing cross stitch or embroidery or even crochet or knitting, you get snags on your nails, and you are going to have a problem with snagging on your fabric or snagging on your thread or your yarn. So you want to keep your nails nice and smooth. They don't have to be short, but they need to be nice and smooth so that they're not snacking on anything. So I actually do keep these in my sewing box. The other thing is, you want to make sure that, one, you do have clean hands when you're sewing, because especially with Aida cloth, you don't want that to get dirty, because if it gets dirty, you're going to have a difficult time. Angel, can you hand me that bag that has the Aida cloth in it? I had to wash. No, that other bag. Aida cloth, when it washes, does funny things. And if you wash it before you sew on it, it's going to look strange. You're going to have to iron it. This is a piece that I had got, and I ended up having to wash it. And you can see it's not very pretty anymore, you know. You can still use it. You can still iron it and use it, but try to keep your work clean, you know. I actually made a set of pillowcases for my daughter's best friend for Christmas, and I was almost finished with the last pillowcase, and I spilled coffee on it. I was nearly in tears because I thought, oh my gosh, all this work, and it's right before Christmas, and this is right. Well, thanks to my grandma teaching me some tricks, I was able to salvage it. I was able to get the coffee out, and I was able to set the colors in the thread without any damage. So that was a relief. But main things that you need is Aida cloth or some other type of woven fabric, embroidery floss, needles, hoop, thread, scissors, and needle threader. Those are the main things. So the next time I will show you how to put your Aida cloth into the hoop. It's kind of tricky. It's a little different from embroidery. And we will start on our first project together. In the meantime, you all have a nice day, and I will see you soon.